Miss Harder, the defendant, according to your papers, is the present girlfriend of your former husband.
Correct. Okay, are you ready for this one? This case is, well, let's just say it's not your typical he said, she said situation.
Definitely not.
We've got exes, a new girlfriend, and accusations of defamation. Oh, and did I mention flyers?
Flyers. Oh, this is going to be good. It really highlights how messy things can get, especially with blended families,
Yeah,
People can go to extreme lengths when they feel like their reputation's on the line.
absolutely. So let's break it down. We have an ex-wife who's claiming that her ex-husband's girlfriend has been spreading lies about her.
Okay, and how is she doing that?
Flyers all over the neighborhood.
Flyers, wow.
Yeah. And she says these flyers are causing serious damage to her reputation. And of course, it's upsetting her kids, too. They're pretty young, 9 and 6 years old.
That's tough. And, whenever you're dealing with accusations that could hurt someone's reputation, especially when kids are involved, that's where the legal concept of defamation comes in. It basically means someone is intentionally spreading false information that harms another person's reputation.
And I guess that's what the ex-wife is arguing.
Right. It's a big deal legally.
Some neighbors even testified that the girlfriend was handing these flyers out before she even moved in. But here's the kicker. The girlfriend admits to handing out the flyers.
Wait, really? She admitted to it?
Yeah.
Interesting. And what's her why is she saying she did it?
She says she was worried about the children's well-being and that she only meant to put the flyers on telephone poles.
The concern for the children, defense.
Mm-hmm.
But legally speaking, this brings up a lot of questions. Can concern for the children really be a valid defense in a defamation case? I mean, can you really just accidentally hand out flyers to people instead of putting them up? The court has to figure out if her actions were actually intended to harm the ex-wife's reputation.
It's a good question. Then we have the ex-husband chiming in, also expressing concern for the kids. He's claiming that the ex-wife and her current boyfriend are abusive.
It's like they're all using the kids as a shield for their own actions.
It does seem that way, yeah. But here's the thing. The ex-husband had already gone to family court and was granted visitation rights.
Oh, so he already had visitation.
Right. So if he was so concerned about his children's safety, why didn't he just try to get full custody?
Through the proper legal channels.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like a huge jump to go from visitation rights to suddenly feeling the need to spread all of this information with flyers.
It does make you wonder about his motives. It makes you question why they chose this specific course of action. It brings up the whole concept of due process, the idea that everyone has the right to a fair legal process. By taking matters into their own hands, they basically bypass the system that's in place to deal with these sorts of concerns.
And that leads us to Judge Judy. She really grilled them about this. She was basically like, if things were so bad, why not just go back to family court?
I bet Judge Judy didn't hold back. So what do they say?
Well, we'll get into that, but Judge Judy's questioning is really important here. She's highlighting that there's a right way and a wrong way to deal with these situations, especially when kids are involved. And creating and distributing flyers without going through the proper legal channels, that's a big red flag.
It is.
It really feels like their actions are speaking louder than words, They say they're concerned about the kids, but their actions seem to suggest otherwise. So what do you think is really going on here?
Well, it's hard to say for sure. I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right? We have to consider, was this really about the children, or were there other motives at play, like maybe trying to get an advantage in a future custody case, or just trying to damage the ex-wife's reputation?
That's a really good point.
There's a lot to unpack here.
There is. This case is full of twists and turns, and it makes you think, how much weight should personal opinions and actions have in legal disputes, especially when kids are involved? That's something to think about.
A lot to think about, for sure. And we're going to keep unpacking all of this when we come back. This next part, well, it'll really get you thinking.
Welcome back. It's interesting how Judge Judy really honed in on the fact that they chose to make and distribute these flyers, like instead of going back to family court.
Right.
If they were so concerned about the kids, going to court seems like it would have been the obvious next step.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think that's where it starts to look a little less like genuine concern and more like they were trying to control the narrative. Don't forget, defamation isn't just about lying.
Right.
It's about intentionally harming someone's reputation. So even if there was some truth to what they were saying on the flyers, the way they went about it is suspicious.
It almost seems like they were trying to turn public opinion against the ex-wife, which that could definitely affect any custody decisions in the future.
Exactly. That's such an important point.
Yeah.
These kinds of actions can have a ripple effect. It's not just about the courtroom. It's about the potential damage to her reputation in the community, her relationships. It can affect her well-being overall.
Yeah, absolutely. Judge Judy also brought up the fact that the ex-husband could have requested a hearing or even asked for the children to have a lawyer to represent their interests. Why do you think he didn't do that?
Well, that's the part that gets me, right? If the situation was really as bad as they said, wouldn't you think they would have tried all the legal options to protect the children? It makes you wonder if it was truly about the kids or if something else was motivating them.
Yeah, if they were really concerned, it seems like going through the proper legal channels would have been a much better way to address their concerns rather than making flyers.
I think so.
It feels like they wanted to create a big public scene instead of working within the system.
And that's a big difference between someone who is genuinely seeking help and someone who's trying to manipulate the situation. The legal system isn't perfect, but it is supposed to be fair. It's supposed to
Right.
be an impartial way to resolve disputes, especially when kids are involved.
So, okay, the girlfriend admitted to handing out the flyers, but she's saying her intentions were good, so where does that leave the case?
Right. Well, now the judge has to determine if she acted with malicious intent to defame the ex-wife, or if it was, like she said, a misguided attempt to protect the children. And it's tough. Even if she was genuinely concerned for the children, the way she went about it could still be considered defamation. So the court has to look at all the evidence, what the flyers said, how they were given out, everyone's testimony.
This case really shows the tension between freedom of speech and protecting people from harm, right? I mean, we have the right to express ourselves, but that right has limits.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There has to be a balance between individual rights and the need for order and due process. The court has to decide whether the girlfriend's actions cross the line from protected speech to defamation.
This deep dive has really made me think more about defamation law and just how complicated things get when personal relationships get mixed up with the legal system. This case is about a lot more than just those flyers.
It really is. It reminds us that even cases that seem simple can be really complex. And it shows just how important the legal system is to deal with difficult situations fairly and try to ensure a just outcome.
It really makes you think about the consequences of our actions and how important it is to look at all sides of the story before making judgments.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what's so interesting about this case. It makes us think about human behavior, the limits of free speech. It's about the balance between personal responsibility and legal accountability.
I'm hooked. This is like a legal thriller.
Oh, and it gets even better. There's more twists and turns. Stay with us as we go deeper into what Judge Judy was asking and what the impact of this case could be on everyone involved.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking about this case where the ex-wife is accusing her ex-husband's girlfriend of defamation. Remember those flyers?
Oh, yeah. It's definitely a messy situation.
It all started with those flyers, but things have gotten a lot more complicated.
For sure. And if you recall, Judge Judy really focused on why they made those flyers instead of going back to family court.
Right.
She even pointed out that they could have asked for a hearing or for a lawyer to represent the kids. So it makes you wonder, if they were so worried about the children's safety, why not do that?
Yeah, it does seem like going to court would have made more sense if they were so concerned. So what do you think Judge Judy was trying to do with all those questions?
Well, she was trying to understand what their motivations really were. Because remember, due process means that everyone deserves a fair chance to present their case to the court. And when they took matters into their own hands, they basically skipped that whole process.
Right.
And, that could have affected the children's right to a fair decision.
So it's like they were trying to be the judge and jury themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of letting the legal system do its job.
Right. And, that's not a good look. It suggests that maybe their concern for the kids wasn't the only thing motivating them.
Okay, so let's say the judge decides that the girlfriend's actions were defamatory. What kind of consequences are we talking about here?
Well, that depends. It depends on how much the ex-wife's reputation was harmed and what the judge thinks the girlfriend's intent was. It could be anything from a monetary judgment to compensate the ex-wife to maybe a court order to stop the girlfriend from making more defamatory statements.
Wow.
It really shows that words have power. Using them carelessly can lead to serious consequences, both legally and personally.
This whole situation really shows how complicated family law can be and how easily things can get out of control when emotions are involved.
It really does. It highlights why communication and respecting boundaries are so important. And it's crucial to remember that everyone's well-being should be a priority, especially the children's.
I think the big takeaway here is that actions speak louder than words. They said they were worried about the kids.
Right.
But their decision to make and hand out those flyers makes you question their true motives.
Absolutely. It reminds us that we all need to think before we act, and to think about how our choices could affect everyone, not just ourselves.
And that the legal system, even though it's not perfect, it's there to help us work through tough situations fairly.
Well said. So thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it's helped you understand defamation law a little better and the importance of due process and how tricky it can be to navigate family disagreements. Until next time, remember, every case has a story to tell.